Go ahead, get started. This is the Warehouse 13 fan panel. And Eureka, and whatever else that you guys want to talk about.
Exploring the universe of Warehouse 13, Alphas, and Eureka.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for coming. We'll do some quick introductions. My name is David Vance. This is my first time doing any panel, but I have been a very, very long time and very diehard fan of Warehouse 13. This show, I can't even tell you how much it means to me, but it's a wonderful show, and I've gone way down the rabbit hole when it comes to collecting everything related to this show. So one of the things that I wanted to share with you guys is some of the things that are a little hard to get your hands on, which, especially for a show that's now 15 years old, right? To find a few things that were actually shown on set. So I've got like a hodgepodge of all kinds of cool things that you'll see from various scenes that are actually stuck on the wall there. And we made sure that you guys, if you want them, have a set of purple gloves for artifact handling. And if you stay the whole time, I've got a special treat for you as well. If you remember from season 3, the insatiable episode, the zombie episode, remember Mandy's taco truck and the little menus, the stack of menus there? I've got a menu here, and that was screen shown. And I had Eddie sign it yesterday. And we are going to give this away to one of you. So stay the whole time. Right towards the end, we've got a little method that'll help determine the winner. But again, just wanted to share the love that I have for this show with you all, and I hope you're as excited about it as I am. And with that, let me allow the rest of the team to introduce themselves.
Hi, my name is Hayden. I'm an author of 14, 15, 16 books. I can't keep track anymore. I have been a lifelong lover of television to the point where I was known as Old Square Eyes as a child. And finally it's like, hey Mom, it works. I made a living at it. Go for it. Everything I've written has always been told that you can see my love for television coming through it, whether it's time travel, urban fantasy, a mystery, whatever. And I'm a real Warehouse 13 and Eureka lover. I will love eventually Alphas, I just haven't watched all of it yet. So I'm here for 2 out of the 3, from a writer's perspective of character arc and plot lines. Hello, my name is Rebecca Carlson. Again, like everybody else, I really, really love Warehouse 13. And it's one of those shows that just kind of lives on my rewatch list, when I want to especially get comfort show. In my regular life, I do cybersecurity investigations, incident response, and I'm also a theatrical stage manager. So,
wow,
cool. Good times.
Very different.
Hey guys, my name is Michael Collins. I'm a dad joke aficionado and theory influencer for the Fandom Hybrid podcast. We're a podcast that deals with Marvel, fantasy, and convention culture, and you can find us wherever you find your podcasts and things, and on YouTube. I love Warehouse 13 mostly because of the literary references. Like every time I see something I've read about and it like freaks me, it's crazy to me. Like I was literally reading The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath with Breakdown. Then I saw Breakdown the next day, and I was like, no, it's crazy. But yeah, I love the show. I love Eureka, and I did love Alphas for the short run it had too.
Hi, I'm Leigh Bennett-Conner, and I apologize greatly for being late. I am just a huge fan of the show. I've been a fan of the show since the first panel we ever had on Warehouse 13, when it was 2 of us up here, just in a fan discussion panel saying, so this new show came out, there's been like 8 episodes, and everybody's like, and we love it. I mean, there was like a line out the room, it was really weird. And we're like, what? Everybody loved this show, and I loved it. I loved Eureka, and I desperately wanted a second season of Alphas because I could see so many interesting opportunities through that universe. or even a movie now. Movie would be fun. Bring all the way back. Okay, oh, am I supposed to be the moderator? Oh, yes.
Leigh, you're the moderator.
Okay, by the way, it keeps putting speaker, not moderator on there. It's very odd, so I keep getting confused.
You're always the moderator.
Okay, good to know, I'm always the moderator. That's what you do to extract directors.
You were
in here.
voluntold, that's
I gotcha. Okay, so, we all talked about this show as we liked it. What, and I like this kind of synchronistic. I'm reading this and then it's in the show. And I think that was one of the things I loved about the show, especially when I was watching it with my son, who's now 25, who's 12, and watching these shows. And I always found it kind of funny that Eureka was on first and Warehouse 13 was on second, because there was much more I did not want to see have a 12-year-old see on Eureka than on Warehouse 13. But in Warehouse 13, I thought that was really it was, first of all, a great family show, Eureka, and even Alpha's. But I think that's one of the things that I saw with this show is I got to explain, he was like, what's this, what's that? You know, we got to explain books, we got to talk about homes, we got to talk about all these things. And he was like, oh, is that what, yes. We got to talk about X, Y, and Z, and I think that really brought up a lot of conversations. And you said you have a lot of dad jokes, and I don't know about anybody else, but how did it, have you watched it with others, and has it brought up that kind of conversation?
Sadly, I'm one of the only people in my friend group that watches the show. And I've tried so hard. I'm like, how help you?
That's us now, so there we go.
I'm gonna record you saying that. And I'm gonna show you.
You shouldn't.
But yeah, it's
We
like,
need to find an artifact and wham him.
I think that's why I like my default vibe, because it's like a farm store, like just open it and like close it up. But I mean, honestly, I love telling people about it more than like watching just like, because I've actually gotten people to watch it just by telling them what's going on in it.
Right.
I mean, it's like all the things that, especially people that I know read like voraciously, and I tell them that, you know, you can find Edgar Allan Poe's Quill is in it, and Robert Louis Stevenson's bookends are in it. It's like, you know, really cool things that they've read about, and they're like, what? And it's a show? I'm like, yeah, just check out the stuff. It's like, you know, I feel like a Warehouse 13 dealer. I'm like, yeah,
Just take one. The first one.
right. Just take one sample and then that's it.
Right, and then you're hooked.
But anybody else, what about you?
So the first time that I watched the show, I was a little late getting to it. I was looking for something to watch. I had a week off of work, and I was, of course, had the Martian death flu and didn't want to get off my couch. And I just happened upon it, and I started watching Warehouse 13, and I was hooked. And it was Claudia was the one that got me. Because at the time I was just getting into, I was in cybersecurity, but I was kind of on the fun side of it, and I was doing pen testing and breaking into stuff. But we won't go there. You know, basically getting into it, and of course, you know, I love to get into where I shouldn't be and get into all sorts of trouble. And Claudia was like, "Oh my God, I am absolutely Claudia." Like, I identified with the characters so much, and I was like, oh, this is so fun to watch. And then now that I've rewatched it a few times, and I'm no longer on the fun side of cybersecurity and doing investigations and stuff, I think now at this point, I'm kind of more like Artie, where I'm like, oh God, here we go again.
Everybody becomes an Artie.
Oh, yeah. You don't have to hear the hair grow gray.
I just start pulling it out and go, here we go. Okay then.
R.I.P. Claudia Donovan.
Ah.
You remember in Insatiable, the little soothsayer, Solomon?
Yeah.
Here they are. What? So for me, Warehouse 13 was a show that I watched when my kids were really, really little. In fact, my son's in the room. He's 15 today, actually.
Maybe at the end we'll really. As an
We'll try. We'll try. But you know, so and Warehouse 13 celebrated its 15th anniversary back in July, right? So I was watching that show basically while I was, you know, changing his diapers, and I was not getting any sleep anyway, so
Right.
so we're gonna enjoy the show. And then, you know, fast forward to about, what, 2 years ago, I guess it was, we got the whole family together, and you know, my son and my daughter and my wife and I watched it together and got to experience it through their eyes and what they loved about it.
Yeah.
And for me, I have a history degree from the University of Georgia. Go Dogs. And you know, so just like you, Leigh, you know, the connection, the historical connections that are interwoven in the
Right.
show give it such a tremendous wealth of both authenticity and also just innate connection, right? You know,
Right.
whatever degree of historical knowledge you have or don't have, there's these things that are real in the real world that have been infused into this world, which pull you right into it.
Right.
And I think that makes this show very unique and very relatable, and it just ties you right in from essentially the first episode because of that connection. And I think that's amazing and wonderful, and just one of the many reasons why the show stands the test of time.
Right.
Yeah.
I started watching both shows from the get-go. The kids are older, out of the house, you know, getting a little old after a while. And looking at both of the shows, there's an economy to it. Warehouse 13 is the building of the family. And Eureka was the repairing of the family and building family beyond family. I found that both shows to be our comfort food, especially during the pandemic, when we wanted something we knew was going to be entertaining and would not bring us down. And I wanted a happy ending, damn it. So I knew that we could watch both Eureka and Warehouse 13, 2 or 3 episodes every night, and it got us through the pandemic with something we look forward to every night.
And I think that's a great way to put it too, because I do think it was one of those that got that. And I think that's I like how you put that with Eureka, you know, fixing and then building, right? Because I think for a lot of people now, it's your found family that is so important. But I also loved the crossovers. I absolutely adored the
Yes.
crossovers,
Yeah.
which is why I keep going back to Alphas going, oh my God, could you have seen? Like, they have to go and fix this, and Warehouse 13 thinks it's an artifact, and no, actually, it's an alpha. You know, those are the kind of things I would go in my head, but what were some things, and I'm gonna start, I'm so sorry.
Rebecca?
Rebecca! I'm so sorry, y'all, that's what being late happens. Rebecca, what were some of the things you liked, or did you like the crossovers?
I have a confession, I didn't watch either Eureka or Alphas.
That's okay.
But
That's
I
just no.
did, I know, I'm sorry. I did like the crossovers that I saw, especially with, I like the relationships between the characters and between people, and kind of the relationship with Claudia and, somebody please refresh my memory, thank you. When, for that particular crossover, which lasted, I think, a few episodes, and then, of course, just kind of disappeared.
Well, then she went over there.
And then
so
she
that
went
was
over
kind of
there,
all
yeah.
right. So, I think that was, yeah, how about you? Yes, please.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So the crossover episodes were unbelievable to me in that, again, it created this wealth and this interconnection. I think it was episode 5 in season 1 of Alphas, where you see Dr. Calder.
Yeah.
Yes.
From the
Oh,
CDC
yeah.
and her role, and I about fell out of my chair because that was in between those two shows. That was that first point of interconnection,
Exactly,
right?
right.
And so to have that, have Dr. Calder, who has many serious moments in the Warehouse 13 world, but also you've gotten to see her relationship, with Artie,
Yes.
and her as an individual, and then you see her in a much more serious tone. She had a small role in that Alphas episode, but Alphas had a very different tenor to it as a show.
It did,
right?
actually, yeah. It had more of what I'd call like the dark part of the universe, which isn't they were dark, but more of there were nefarious goings on.
Right, it was the implications. When you start
Yes.
thinking about the implications of Alphas, good and bad, and the way that they interact with the world, the way they're capable of interacting with the world, it was much more ominous, right? So there was a little bit of a feeling of heaviness to Alphas that that Warehouse 13, captured in certain moments that Eureka, didn't delve into quite as much. But again, it just weaved it all together in such a beautiful way, where you kind of knew these characters in a way, or even these actors in certain cases, right? Where Ryan Cartwright comes on in season 5 as the doofer in there, and you see that the same actor in a very different role in a very different way, right?
They did that a lot. Erica, Sarah, and Niall Matter were both characters in Warehouse 13. They were not their Eureka characters.
Right.
But then you had Fargo coming, and then you had Claudia going.
Right.
So both of those, you had characters. So I call it the incestuous world of Canadian casting.
Well, that is a very, very lovely world. We
It
do
is a
that.
lovely world, because I love the actors feeling going, oh yeah, they're so, or our favorite thing is, oh, we saw that set in Stargate. It is a sense of comfort. It is not a sense of, I'm not mad that they do it, I kind of find comfort in that. Same with the casting, when you say, oh, Joe Flanagan, Stargate Atlantis, he's in the episode.
Yeah, what a surprise, yeah, right. No, well, and I want to say that too, I like that, because I always wondered if there was because Artie wouldn't go to a Eureka, if you remember
But
that.
he did.
Right.
Well,
It was an actor, everyone went Artie.
Yeah, he went, right.
Saul was
But
there.
it was like, no, And I always wondered if those characters coming back with different names, different backstories,
Yeah.
was kind of like, well, we got to keep these two worlds a little separate.
Well, you think about it, Eureka was the science of
Mhm.
this world. Warehouse 13 was the magic of this world. I mean, it sounds like Albus might have been the danger of this world.
I think, Albus was much
I mean,
more about
if you just
the real
do
world.
this-
in a way,
this-
yeah.
Broad color for each one of them.
And I personally, I love the crossovers as well, especially Don't Hate the Player. Don't Hate the Player was the absolute best.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's like they go into Fargo's mind in his video game, and it's like, oh my goodness. I wasn't really into role playing games before then, but after that, I was like, okay, I gotta find somebody.
You got
I mean, it was brilliantly done, and it's like to see Micah, Pete, and Claudia in there with him, and like assuming her. It was almost like the Dungeons and Dragons cartoon of the '80s. I'm dating myself. I'm just saying.
That's okay. I got it on VHS.
They did.
Yeah. But I love the crossovers. I shipped Fargo and Claudia so hard. I was like, they had to get together, but they was like.
Well, but see, I actually, at the end when Claudia was kind of like, the one running everything, and Fargo might like that. We just didn't know. They popped all around all over the place. So yeah, I like that future episode. Please jump in. What were some of the things you liked about the shows, where they crossed over, where you wished they had crossed over, things like that? Yes, please.
Specifically about Eureka, there was an episode that stands out in my mind where they were all different kinds of cartoon and anime. From scene to scene, and I thought that was the most clever.
The Christmas episode,
and-
that was brilliant.
Right, and perfect show to do that on.
And I did love the ones that were like that stop action that we remember from Frosty, and I was like, oh, date myself, but yeah, I remember that stuff. That was always good. What about, please, yes, yeah? Don't be shy.
Eureka kind of has a couple plot lines about time travel and kind of creating alternate realities. And you guys were just talking about how the actors appear between the shows. One is like with the crossovers, but also is like appearing as different characters entirely. Have you ever thought about like maybe the kind of time travel shenanigans happening in Eureka being the cause of that? Like maybe it's different like reality versions of this person, or just like
splintered world.
splitting the timeline so badly you're just creating a new person.
Yeah. You broke it, for a while it was really good, then you broke it, then we fixed it, but it's a little different now. Yeah, I don't know if I thought of that, but.
I mean, it could be a way of making artifacts, like something wasn't an artifact, but someone touched it out of time, and it became an artifact because they changed how the
Well, it was in the very last episode, it was the birth of an artifact. They were watching it, an artifact being formed because of the situation.
Right.
I liked about the comedy. We were in with Eddie just a while ago, and funny man, you know, he has his punching the buttons and stuff. Colin Ferguson has to be the funniest comedic physical actor I have seen in a long time, and who can turn around and do totally serious stuff, and you're going, oh, that poor character. That man could bend himself like a pretzel.
He can. First of all, he is ridiculously tall and thin.
Yeah.
Second of all, yes, he can bend himself like a pretzel. And his little his
Two
face,
different
he
types
would do
of
these
comedy.
looks like,
Yeah.
and you're just like, I don't know how you made that face. So yeah, I think that I would have loved to see more of, like, I would have loved to see Colin and Eddie.
Oh,
Oh,
God.
oh my God, I
That
would
would
have
have been
loved to see
hilarious.
Colin and Eddie.
That would have taken 3 weeks to shoot.
Along with Joanne. I would have loved to see that very, her looking at him going, oh Lord, help me, there are 2 of them. I understand that idea of her looking that look, so yeah. Anybody else? Please, please, please don't be shy, it's a fan discussion. Him and then yes.
One of my favorite things that I saw in Warehouse 13 was specifically with Pete's storyline and his character arc, seeing a really good depiction of a recovering alcoholic,
Yes.
where they don't make everything about the character revolve around that. Like, if you aren't paying attention, it's one of those, like, you might miss it if you miss the right episodes of, like, him going to a meeting or like discussing, thinking maybe somebody relapsed, or when he messed with the telegraph machine and got whammied, and they were worried that he had relapsed, and going and caring about him so much.
Right.
Or when they
And-
changed bodies, and Micah had had some booze, he's going, but it wasn't you, it's okay.
Well, and they
Or
set it up.
or the juggling balls.
Yes, yes.
When they
Speaking of juggling balls,
I was about to hold.
these are the actual ones that I made.
But yeah, having a character that has that as part of their arc was really great, especially for me as someone who has people, family and friends who are in recovery. Seeing such a positive depiction of someone who is recovering was fantastic in my mind.
Yeah,
The only other-
Well, and they set that up really, like, I think in the first episode, when he's, you know, sees the warehouse for the first time, and he's just like, oh my God, and Artie, you know, is offering him, what do you want something to drink? And he's like, I know what you want, how about a glass of milk instead?
Yeah.
You know, anything like that, like, so they,
Well, it was also, I think, really well with the alcoholics is that you saw it with the Secret Service,
Yeah.
right? That he had screwed up and they were really worried that he'd done it again, right? And he had to go do, he was like, what do I gotta go do? And he's like, he hands him the cup to go pee in. You know, I mean, that was the kind of thing that I thought brought some realism to it. And I also love a good fish out of water,
Right.
and which is why I loved Colin Ferguson in Eureka.
Yep.
And why I love Joanne in Warehouse 13. That fish out of water was just like, these things don't happen, and it's like, or they do.
Yeah, well, and here's the grown-up.
well, and that's one of the things that I loved about the characters and all the characters and their character arcs. You know, you think of Secret Service agents as very serious and they're very dedicated to their jobs, and they are.
Right.
When they're not on the job and they cut loose, it's a whole different character. It's a whole different person, and they're kind of crazy. But you know, there is this thread of, you know, alcoholism that runs through it. Any of these kind of jobs, really, because of the stress that they're under. And I think that Warehouse 13 did a great job of showing how the characters handled that kind of, you know, legitimate stress, like legitimate work life, and then, you know, the impact that it had,
But
and still
everyone-
managed to be absolutely off the wall.
Everyone
and goofy at
around him
times.
was so very supportive of it.
Mhm.
And that was the message you wanted to see was, okay, I have a problem with alcohol, well, we're all here to support you. And it was real support.
Mhm.
I mean, the whole show Warehouse 13 is kind of about forgiveness. It's like a lot, like they do a whole lot of really bad, some bad things, but everybody's still there for each other, and they're like, you know what, everybody makes mistakes, let's just go on to the next thing.
Yeah, no, we had news, yes, please.
So as somebody who grew up as what I would call a curious tinkerer, I was always the type that I got in trouble for disassembling a TV as a kid.
Thank God you never met my child. Thank you.
Yeah, I grew up into the type of person who 3D prints and designs 3D models now, mostly utilitarian stuff, but I'm working on the Farnsworth actually.
Nice.
So if you could make something, what would you want if it, like, just for the show as an idea?
That is so hard. Because yeah, a Farnsworth would be great, but what I'd really like is a case that looks like a Farnsworth that's not a ridiculous price, because I've seen them. And I don't know, what about you?
I want access to their research system.
Oh,
yes.
Just so I can, if I find something, I can instantly type up and see if it's an artifact, or I can see if there's an artifact around, because I'm that dumb where I'm like, oh, I want to go look for an artifact. Sure. It could kill you, so.
Excellent, I have.
As
Exactly.
you just saw from Eddie, and Eddie, I assume he did, I did not see him this year yet, but he's also somebody, he said, I'm somebody that likes to pick up and play with stuff.
Oh, yeah, he talked about that.
Oh, yes, yeah, and so he was like, Pete is gonna get into so much trouble there, and he did. So I'm like,
Oh, I don't know if I could narrow down one specific artifact. I think I just want free reign to the warehouse. Whatever, to play with whatever. I'm like, oh, this looks fun. What can this do? What can we build up?
Put on your gloves.
Yeah.
Don't
Again, this
touch
is
them.
why I was, identified so hard with Claudia. I'm like, oh, what can I play with? What kind of trouble can I get into?
To be fair, I'm working on, I've got a list. There's, I can't remember the name, but the spine attachment, I'm working on.
The spine of Saracen.
oh, that was so
Oh,
cool.
dude.
I'm wanting to make that into a dice tower, for instance.
Oh, that'd be fun.
Then that will be bought by my husband, yep, I got you.
We got Eddie to sign it last year.
Oh, cool.
Wow.
Super cool.
I actually have at home an antique mirror that's been in my family for years. Like, it's got to be well over 100 years old. And I remember after I watched the episode with any of the episodes with Alice, and you see that mirror, and like I would walk by the hallway and look at that mirror and be like. Now it's sitting in my office at home, and I'm like, I'm gonna turn that to the wall.
Yeah, so turning your question a little bit sideways, away from the artifact and more to the alpha ability. So there was Summer Glau's character in Alphas, where she had the ability to very quickly, and see her alpha ability was to see all, see how things were constructed, and in the blink of an eye, be able to assemble whatever it is that she needed to, like, MacGyver it together,
Oh, yeah,
essentially,
right. And that's always fun.
That would be an amazing alpha ability for you, and it's one that I think that I really identified with as well. I love building things and having that kind of ability, whether it's artifact induced or whether it is alpha genetics induced, I think would be really cool.
I think the one thing I always wanted, not from Warehouse 13, but from Eureka, was the house. I wanted that house. I wanted a house that could come in and know, and I'm a recovering alcoholic, so it was like, you're always a recovering alcoholic. But it was like that, that you could come in and it was like, okay, now I know, but here's your big old glass of fizzy juice. And you're like, yeah, okay. But, I wanted that kind of a house that knows what you want and need better than you do.
Like that. Sarah, we all want a Sarah.
I always want Sarah, yeah.
Instead, we have Alexa.
Yeah, I would much rather, I think Sarah.
I have always wanted to do that instant hack like Claudia does. Okay, I'm in.
Oh my God!
How accurate is that?
It's not. I had to do serious suspension of disbelief during some of those scenes. Like, all right, never mind. No.
But it was foolish fulfillment for all of those of us. And talking about things, we have a antique pencil sharpener. And I always thought that would be a really good one because you could sharpen your pencil there and then write like Shakespeare, or something like that. But so far it hasn't worked.
As kind of a cross fandom thing, can you imagine if Claudia went against Hardison?
Oh, yeah.
Ooh.
That would be great.
That would be awesome.
That would be kind of awesome. Yeah.
Don't just think about that. It's like her saying jinkies and him saying, I got you.
Yeah. You're first and then, yeah.
Thank you. The other thing, dichotomy between the two. Eureka, Global Dynamics, all into the future. And then you see Warehouse 13, which has got the big steampunk vibe going. With all the old, and you know it's because they can't get funding and it's all old stuff. But yeah, there's definitely, not the same but different.
I love that aspect, because you had the clean and neat and the steampunk. It's just, it's like, dichotomy apparently is my word of the panel, but they were really so totally different.
Well, and it's kind of like a working for the feds thing anyway. Tell me what you need and I'll tell you how you can do without it.
Mhm.
And so, they just kind of made it all up.
You want 10 million? Here's $1.50.
You're gonna go figure it out. Okay, we will.
I used to work for the feds too. I'm now retired, and one of the things I would always say is like, I don't usually try to say no, but this is a no because I'm not going to jail. I took an oath for certain things, and I'm not. I don't look good in orange. I really don't. Yes, ma'am, in the back.
I don't have a long memory like you guys. It's been years since I watched Warehouse 13, but another character that stuck out to me besides the main four was H.G. Wells.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes, I love her. She
When
was
I said
H.
Holmes, I meant Wells, and I don't know where my brain went. But yeah, H.G. was.
I love the reveal that she was a woman when
Yes.
PP was looking,
Yeah.
looking for him.
Yeah.
And she had talking to HG all the time. And so he's like, I found him. Mike's, I found her.
She's okay.
And
He's a she.
started out,
Oh, yeah,
how
you
she
get that
started
one out.
and then
5 minutes
turned
too
it
late.
around at the end, like how she worked against them. But then
Yeah.
at the end, she sacrificed herself, and that backstory about her
Right.
daughter.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a massive evolution
Yeah.
and kind of like a spiral. I don't want to think of it as a circle. It was a spiral. Such a complex individual encased in bronze, but with your mind still functional
Still
for
active.
100 years.
Yeah. That
Imagine,
would be
I can't even
That would
imagine
be-
what that would be like.
Yeah.
Torture.
Yes,
Torture.
yes.
I mean, it
Well,
really was.
and-
That's
and
exactly
you
what
can
they
see
were
what
doing.
happened when someone was encased in bronze for 500 years with Paracelsus. Now, he was a little crazy before he went in,
Right.
already, but he was a lot when he came out.
Right. Right. Yes, sir.
I think part of the reason why I love these shows, because I watched Warehouse 13 and Alpha's when it aired, and I didn't watch Eureka till later. And then talking about the crossovers, how well the writing went, and it's like when the characters enter, even though you're surprised to see that character, it works so well. And like, there are shows that try to do like what you talked about with the magic and the darkness and whatnot. Like Stargate is the first one I think of. You have Stargate, you have Atlantis, and you have Universe. Everybody loves Stargate SG-1 and Atlantis. Everybody, except for me apparently, hated Universe.
A friend of mine told me I was wrong about Stargate Universe, and that's not the first time we disagreed since third grade, but yeah, I got you.
I just think the way, that goes to credit to not only the writers and the actors, but just their correlation to be able to do that so smoothly, where even though the characters from a different show that had basically a different theme, they just blended so well into that universe.
Well, it's good writing, and it
Yes.
was
Really good.
I mean, when I heard words coming out of Claudia's mouth in Eureka, they were Claudia's words. It was not a case of, I'm trying to write for Claudia, but I don't know what to do. It was very obvious that the writers from each of the different franchises understood the other character really well, and they allowed the actors to probably weigh in a bit too.
Hail Canada, hail Canada. Because of that, so.
We
Did
love
you have a
Canada.
question? Nope, okay, yes, sir.
What do you think was different about the Sci-Fi Channel then? Think about it, Sci-Fi had Stargate, the Universe, 3 Stargate shows, Battlestar Galactica, the reboot, which was probably one of the best written sci-fis until Expanse came along. It had Eureka, Warehouse 13, Alphas.
Babylon 5, Hayden.
Babylon 5, yeah.
Well, and I, okay, so it's really upsetting to me, because when it was sci-fi, not sci-fi, which I will tell you very honestly, I worked in public health. If I had seen sci-fi written down, I would have thought, oh, syphilis.
That's a real description of it, what the channel became.
That really is. There you go.
It all went badly.
when
But-
NBC Universal bought it up.
Yeah.
basically,
Well,
yeah.
and-
It's there ain't a music video anywhere on MTV anymore.
Well, and I think that was it too, is that it just, one of the reasons I've always thought that these shows worked as much, we're all here 15 years later, right? And I think one of the things that these shows did was be in the moment, right? X-Files really kind of needed cell phones to work. You know, Warehouse did too, but it was also of that moment of, here's what's going on in our world, and we're taking, as we talked about, Battlestar Galactica, best ever political drama written that wasn't political drama. But yeah, I think that was it. I think sci-fi was full of joy, although with big old bumps of reality. And then sci-fi was full of
Wrestling.
I'm not going to say that word because on the back it says, please remember, panels in this track room are for general audiences, keep it clean. And I promise you they put that there.
And I think you can also broaden it out a little bit, not just Sci-Fi Channel, but just the media landscape, of course, was totally different back then than it is now. But there were a lot of shows that had either, you know, science fiction, fantasy themes, supernatural themes, you know, and it was just a thing that everybody, and some of that I think has to do with, of course, you know, the millennium. You always see a rise historically in, you know, a belief in supernatural, or a belief in skepticism as well, the corresponding, you know, on the opposite side of the pendulum there.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, the thing is, it's like NBC saw something interesting and they were like, oh, let's capitalize on it, and completely wrecked it.
Yeah.
It's like, it happens all the time when you see like little independent shows or independent networks that do good, and then they have like a little cult following. They're like, oh, let's jump in on this and infuse it with money and totally make everybody forget about why they were there in the first place.
They didn't understand the heart of the
CW
show.
right now.
Yeah, like CW.
Vice,
As somebody,
all the good networks that, you know, they brought out.
yeah. MTV is the perfect example to me because
Yes,
of
they used to play
reality TV. When they used to play videos. Did I have anybody else? But do we answer that? Okay. Yes, please.
I enjoyed all these shows when they were on air, but I was absolutely enamored with alphas, and I never have anybody to talk to. It's always on my panel when I do panels about faves. Council faves is always number one. So y'all, and it connected to me because I'm a huge X-Men fan, and I was like, oh, these are X-Men in real life. So the ones who watched it, can y'all just talk about, you know, how, you know, what connected with y'all to it? Or why you watched it also?
Sure. So for me, there was one of the things that pulled me in right away with alphas was that there was already kind of an innate understanding, because there had been some shows that had kind of delved into, like you said, you know, the superhuman kind of capabilities, right? So there's an immediate familiarity, but they sort of set aside the innate good versus evil, right? You know, the X-Men versus Magneto kind of stuff, and there were a lot more shades of gray. And that, to me, was part of the brilliance of alphas, especially the beginning. And then it got even more convoluted as we get into season 2, right? Was that it really is all just shades of gray, and they all had their moments where they had their heroic moments, where they used their abilities in the best possible way. But you could see how quickly and easily those same abilities could be turned and do terrible, awful things all at once. And it made it very human. I think probably, you know, I hate that the show ended on such a painful cliffhanger. Like, the pain just stays with you that we don't get to know more of what happens with that show. But if you haven't watched it, it's worth the heartbreak to not know in the end. It's still worth it to watch it.
There is heartbreak though.
But you know, so I think it's that balance of that innate thing that you kind of know a little bit, but digging into it and getting into the shades of gray with it. And that, to me, is what made it so ominous and real, and it wasn't a show that I could sit there and binge watch 3 or 4 episodes. It was one where I had to watch that episode and then I had to sit with it for a little bit. I had to let it sit, and my mind would kind of take off with, well, what are the implications? And you think about all these global implications, and what if this were real? What would, you know, it takes you on a journey, not only while you're watching the episode, but well after.
Yeah, it makes you think, and I think one of the things I loved about Alphas was how protective Rosin was. I mean, he was the Charles Xavier for them. And as you bring that up, I really didn't even think of that, but thank you. Set it up all the time. But I also think with Alphas, it showed like, okay, what if I did have this power? There are downsides. It didn't matter what power it was. There are always going to be downsides. And so I thought that was very, it was apt. Again, as you said, it made you think later. And that's what I think all of these shows did. For as much fun as they were, although Alphas, it was a good show to watch. It's kind of like somebody saying, did you like Schindler's List? That's the wrong word to use, but you guys get it. You're all laughing. So good.
Where conversely with Eureka and Warehouse 13 is, can we watch one more episode?
Yes.
That was our key phrase, you know, after you're like, oh, it's not late, it's
Not
not
important. Your key phrase.
Yes, please.
I like to say that like Warehouse 13 as a show is an artifact.
Ooh. Okay.
Its effect is creating joy. Because like I'll talk about it being a comfort show, like
Endless wonder.
Endless wonder.
It's not the best show that I've ever seen, but it's the show that makes me the happiest. Like there's not another show that I've ever seen that makes me as happy watching
It's
it.
had more heart than
But-
almost any other show that I
Yes,
know.
Yeah.
but like all artifacts, it has a downside.
There's only 4 seasons.
Downside.
Really?
Yes.
Right.
The downside, you get to the last episode and you finish watching it, and it makes you want to go back and start all over again.
Obsession.
Well,
Obsession.
I think that is true, because it was something, and Alphas was something I watched when I had it. I think that was during the time I was still on VHS, so we were taping it that way. I think it was, but you know, that was really kind of cool. I mean, it was those kind of things that it brought it up and you made it think. And then Warehouse for me was, it brought it up, let's watch another one because this was hilarious and good and da-da-da. But then at the dinner the next night or that day, you know, we would talk about what it meant. And same thing with Eureka, which I think Eureka is why my son still wants to be a mechanical engineer.
We need more engineers. The thing about Eureka did the exact thing, because you saw Jack and Zoe
Yes.
leaving as they're passing by, and you're going, oh, it's a cycle, it's starting all over again.
That was if you, I don't know how many people have here read the whole Dark Tower thing. Yeah. Yes, please.
Of all 3 shows, which character do you most identify with and why? And for Rebecca, other than Claudia.
Other than Claudia. So probably Pete, because I do tend to still get into a lot of mischief. I think okay, good. My boss isn't here, because he was talking about actually attending them. I'm like, oh, no.
This is my kind of game.
But I do tend to get into a fair amount of mischief when I don't have a lot of eyes on me, until I actually have to sit down and do work, and then I'm all business. So, but I try not to do that very often.
Joe, from Eureka. I want to be a badass so bad.
What do you mean want to be?
Well, yeah, that's my husband. I want guns. I want to, she actually demonstrated a great ability to understand what people were talking about in terms of scientific stuff. Although she was, you know, one of the dumb ones. No, she wasn't. She understood so much. So I want to be Joe with that hair.
Oh, yes.
This is tough because, like, back when I first started watching Eureka, I wanted to be Fargo so bad. But as I went through the series, I wanted to be Henry.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, because his arc, him going through everything he went through and how he met his relationship with his son, and like I really started loving his character. So
Henry was really perfect.
He
in the
really-
long run.
He was a great character, and he was the smartest person in the room at all times, and never told everybody that he was the smartest person.
And that actor, every time I've ever seen him.
Joe Morton's brilliant.
He is absolutely brilliant, thank you, I could not, of course, brain problems here.
Yeah.
But Joe, just, damn. If I see a movie, even though it's like 1 star, I'm like, well, Joe's in it, so at least he'll be good.
Right.
Yeah, you know.
Brother from outer space.
Yeah, how about you?
Okay, so, I think it's changing. If you ask my son, he probably says Artie.
Yep.
And maybe a little bit more every year, right? Grumpiness, but honestly, when I look at myself and my journey, my evolution, I definitely identify the most with Micah. Interestingly enough.
Okay.
You know, fairly uptight, bookish, you know, very driven, focused, won't accept anything other than utter perfection, and you know, the shame when you don't live up to that. That definitely hits home for me, and I didn't notice it the first time I watched through, or the second time. I think every time you watch Warehouse 13 and you go through it, you lock in with a different character. I don't know if you guys do that.
Yeah.
Obviously, for me, it was, you know, Pete was the gateway drug.
And he's a good gateway drug.
It's either Pete or Claudia.
Yeah, and then Claudia, you know, took over for a while, and you know, and I know, you know, sometimes Micah gets kind of left behind, but the more I watch, the more I see, yeah, that's a lot like me.
You're talking about different times of your life when you watch this too, where you are a different
Right.
person.
Right,
You know,
exactly.
and you, all of a sudden, something else resonates with you because of the experiences you had, and you're like, you know, I understand her a lot better now.
I always wanted to be Mrs. Frederick.
Somebody would bring her up.
Actually, I think I want to be CCH Pounder, but
I loved
what I
when
love.
she showed up on one of the panels in one of her Mrs. Frederick
Oh,
episodes.
years ago, yes.
Scared to
Wow.
death to talk to that woman.
She had one of the pink suits on with the big pearls. It was just
wow.
like the most
Oh,
awesome
wow.
thing in the whole. I mean, I was just like, my eyes turned into hearts, like an
The only thing
anime.
that I would say to
I might
Mrs.
actually
Frederick
pass
is yes,
out of my
ma'am, and how
phone.
high.
She is
I would not mess with that woman at all.
And it was so funny too, because Eddie was getting a little Eddie, and she just looked at him. And he went,
There was a time when we were on the panel.
that's all she had to do.
She was on the panel, and Allison turns over and she's getting Abby to look. I'm going, oh my God, Claudia grew up and now she's making him the little brother.
Yeah.
She was giving him you've done enough shenanigans, let's get back to the series.
Well, I think the reason I like Mrs. Fredericks too was, first of all, the ability to pop somewhere all the time. That sounds just brilliant, especially as I'm older. But there was Mrs. Fredericks picked the best people for the job
Yeah.
and got out of their way unless she had to step in.
She stood by them too.
And she stood by them. When they brought her in the diner, and it was like, oh, when they brought her or Artie?
Artie.
And there was that, and then later she was, he has my full support. He always has. Because, you know, was he a Russian spy? Was he this? Was he that? The other thing, and this is where I think Mrs. Fredericks is a very heartfelt character. She watched her children and her grandchildren, and I think she was on great at that point. And there's something so beautiful about that, to be able to watch your
Right.
family, and yet there is something so heartbreaking. We had a friend just pass 2 weeks ago, and his dad wasn't supposed to be there, and his dad was. And so I feel that for Mrs. Fredericks, that it's wonderful, and yet there's always a price, right? No matter what it is.
She had such insight in the final episode, because that's the moment Claudia realized she didn't want to be the head of the warehouse. You're going, oh my God, she saw that, and we're all going, oh yeah, I can see that now.
And then when she showed up in the end in the little outfit she had on, I was just howling. But yeah, no, I think that was good.
Speaking of tragic, poor Jinxie.
Well, you say that with tragic, I think somebody else brought it up, that these people were willing to sacrifice, and I think Jinxie is a great example of that.
It's like that whole X section with Artie having a premonition, and then Jinxie finding out about the metronome,
Right.
and then them finding out that Artie is actually Brett Spiner's character, and the whole thing was coming true that he had stabbed. I'm like, that whole part just like my mind was going in circles like the whole time.
Yeah.
Like that's one of the best like parts of Warehouse 13 to me.
And I also love that episode because Claudia was like, we have to take that, and she was like, nope, it's mine.
Yeah.
You already screwed it up, it's mine.
I also, jumping ship on this thing, talking about Jinxie, why the hell did not use Aaron and Sean when they did the split of the guys? It must have been a hair thing, is all I can think of.
It might have been, one of them had to have a beard or something at that time.
That would have
You
been like the
couldn't
most
CGI it.
glorious twin cameo.
Well, the only one close is Nicholas Brendan when they did it in
Yes.
Buffy, because that is his twin brother,
That is his
and
twin
you can
brother.
tell they're tiny differences. I saw a hand over here, yes ma'am.
I forgot.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
When you're 75, you don't remember things.
I'm so sorry. Yes, please.
So they had great crossover episodes. What is a show from past or present that you think would have been an interesting crossover for any of the shows? Like, I think like the Librarians versus the Warehouse 13 battling for artifacts.
Again, I think.
Supernatural.
Yes. I think Leverage would have been a great one.
Oh,
Like,
Leverage is fantastic.
I think that them trying to steal back an artifact, and Mike and Pete coming, ho, what are you guys doing? And them having like a 2 or 3 episode series on them trying to steal it, then steal it back, then.
Because it's valuable in one element, but it's valuable in another way,
Right.
you know?
Yeah, I think that would have been awesome.
Yep. I think one for me, I would have loved to have seen Rodney McKay against Allison and against Claudia. Because Claudia would have made him spitting mad, and Allison would have just looked at him and gone, "You've been away for a while, huh?" And I would have loved that with Rodney, because he needed sometimes a little taken down.
Okay.
Yes, now you
I did
remember. I'm gonna be quiet.
Okay. All right. You were talking about VHS and so I did VHS on Warehouse. I was a teacher, and I used Warehouse 13 to teach thinking out of the box and critical thinking. You were talking about, okay, this sounds great. What's the downside? What could go wrong? You know, kind of thing. And it was great because I didn't have to worry about, something inappropriate is going to pop up, but I didn't remember it was here.
Right.
So, but the thinking out of the box was so helpful for my 5th, 6th graders in that, you know, a lot of them are like, there's only one way to see it. And I'm like, well, what about this? Look at this, you know. And using video just made it more interesting.
It did. I think it was interesting because I've now brought my son and my nephew were both raised here. And last year, we brought 2 nibblings. We brought more nibblings, but we brought my Hayden, who is 11 now, and Aspen, who is 16. And I was like, they don't want to go to any of these panels and talk about Warehouse 13 or Buffy or this or that. And my son looked at me and went, "Mom, we weren't the normal kids that watch those shows." But but we were. Again, it was those shows that bring joy. But again, we got back to when nerd was a bad word for a while. There was that sci-fi explosion, and then thank God for Marvel and all of that. Star Trek, especially.
Star Trek, yeah.
We've only got 5 minutes, so we'll have to make this the last comment, but please.
Piggybacking off of your conversation right there, when do you feel like maybe that bubble's gonna pop and we're all gonna go right back to that like shadow version of ourselves? We're all gonna have to go hide again.
I hope never.
Like,
I hope never.
Yeah,
I don't.
I'm never going back.
I'm
too old. I can't.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the beauty of aging, is that we don't have to really worry about that anymore.
Because we don't care.
Absolutely.
Pretty much.
Absolutely.
And I think many of us are on a Gen X's on this panel, so I think that there's, we were raised on Pop-Tarts.
Yeah.
We can lift through anything.
Hose water. Pop-Tarts and hose water.
Pop-Tarts and hose water.
But see, that's the question.
Right, yeah.
That's the thing about like fandoms and people being called nerds is like, and the culture changing is that people recognize that what you like is what you like, and you can, and hating some and giving somebody grief about it is not cool. It's like you can like what you like and not hide it, because I know a lot of kids who were popular. Later in life, I found out they were huge Star Wars nerds. They were huge like RPG players, and it's like, but they never showed it because they were always like, oh, I'm too cool. I'm too cool to show that side of me. But now, I think it's good now that everybody wants to show this side of them because it's there, and they don't care what anyone else thinks. And I think that's the one thing that's going to propel us forward and not have us go back to hiding, because this is like Pandora's box. Once it's out, it's out. You can't go back.
Well, at this point, I
There's
don't
no
think we
putting
can
back
go
in.
back. No, there is no putting back in. And I just said in the, we were talking about Stranger Things the other day, and yesterday actually. And one of the things was that Erica started, calling her brother nerd. And then she's in there with Dustin, if you watch this show, and he's like, you can do this in your head, right? What's the square root of this? What's this times this? What's this times this? She answers them all right. He looks at her and goes, you're a nerd.
I have to make a confession.
Yes.
I'm approaching a really important high school reunion.
Oh my.
Oh boy.
A really, really important one, and I was the only science fiction geek in the class. And they still think of me that way, and I'm going, damn straight. And they gave me a career. I have a degree in engineering. Nobody else in that class does,
Well, and I think that we've taken that term now, and really moved it. And, there's a lot of people that are yelling out what they're proud about, and that's good. I want them to. So we
They
can
would
yell
be
out that
lucky
we're all
to be
proud.
us.
Yes.
I think one of the other things to look at is it's now more acceptable for women to be nerds or geeks or get excited about this kind of stuff.
It gave us a while before we had those mentors on television, but we did start to get some.
Well, and that was one of the good things about Warehouse 13 was we had Claudia, we had Micah, who is of course very driven, very, very focused, and extremely competent. H.G. Wells, who is, definitely talked about being a woman in a man's world, especially in Victorian times and coming into modern times. Mrs. Frederick, who nobody in their right mind would ever want to mess with. And so you have these strong female characters, and it definitely gave, something for women and young girls to actually look up to and say, yeah, I identify with those characters.
I'm a bookseller on top of everything else that I do, and I was talking to the lady who wrote, she has a book about Hura, being a role model for young black girls. I said, it wasn't just young black girls. It was white girls too, because we saw someone who was competent, who was female, who wasn't Nurse Chapel, who was, could be in the command chair when necessary. And I said, she inspired a whole generation of just women. And she said, I never thought of it that way.
Well, and it's like with X-Files, how much their female applications went up. So, unfortunately, let us all say that we are glad we are nerds and geeks and whatever other terms we're going to use. And thank y'all for coming to the panel.
And one last thing. Yes, we have a giveaway, as mentioned earlier.
Yes, you do.
We have a menu from the Insatiable episode, autographed by Eddie. This is screen shown, and one of you is coming home with it. And we had to figure out a way to do this the right way. So we wanted to find the person whose birthday, month, and date, and day was closest to Eddie's birthday. So if your birthday is the closest to May 27th, who's got the closest birthday to May 27th in this room?
I'm not June 1st.
What, June 1st?
April 17th.
April 17th. June is closer than.
There we go, Beck.
May 23rd.
May 23rd. There we go. We have a winner.
Also, get a picture, put it all up. Oh,
Yeah.
no, he's right behind you.
Yeah, there you go.
Yay.
Um,
1967, Fred.
Oh, 67? Okay. Do you remember, please, to rate and review all your panels? We love constructive criticism. And it helps everyone create better panels and see what we want to know. Y'all still want to keep talking about warehouse and alphas and Eureka, which is great because I still want to do that too. So, and also do remember the charity and the blood drive. If you can do either of those, thank you very much. Thanks, y'all.